Commander Xylax's blade stopped one molecule from Cadet Emma Johnson's throat as 10,000 cadets watched in the grand arena, and he announced humanity's application to the Galactic Military Concordat was hereby rejected for pathetic inadequacy. Then Emma's hand moved faster than the arena's combat sensors could track. The blade she'd been holding clattered to the floor. Her hand was empty. Xylax's eyes widened as he processed what his combat-enhanced neural pathways were screaming at him. The human had disarmed herself mid-humiliation, not from fear, but to catch his blade bare-handed. Her fingers rested against the edge, applying just enough pressure to stop its momentum without breaking skin. "Sensor malfunction," announced the arena's automated system. "Combat tracking offline. Recalibrating." The commandant stared at her hand on his blade. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. In 40 cycles of military service, across 12 campaigns that had reshaped the galactic balance of power, nothing had ever caught his strike. The Korvathi were enhancement-born warriors, their reaction speeds legendary, their combat doctrine studied in every military academy across 300 systems. This human, this soft-skinned representative of a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel, had just moved faster than his blade. "Impossible," Xylax breathed, his mandibles clicking in unconscious agitation. Emma released his blade and stepped back, her expression neutral. "Sir, the demonstration appears complete. Thank you for your time." The grand arena remained frozen in disbelief. 10,000 cadets from 70 different species sat in absolute silence. This was supposed to be humanity's failure, their public rejection, the moment the galactic community confirmed what everyone already knew. Deathworlders were tough survivors. Yes, but warriors. Military assets. That required discipline, training, evolutionary advantages these newcomers simply didn't possess. For 20 minutes, Xylax had systematically dismantled that assumption by dismantling Emma Johnson. He demonstrated 17 different combat scenarios where human physiology proved inferior. Their reaction speeds? Too slow. Their strength-to-weight ratio? Inadequate. Their sensory processing, laughably limited compared to species with compound eyes. Thermal vision, electromagnetic sensitivity. The cadets had laughed. The Vrexian contingent had started a mocking chant about soft death world pretenders. Even the High Council observers in their elevated box had exchanged knowing glances, already drafting the official rejection. Emma had endured it all with quiet professionalism, following every instruction, accepting every defeat, her expression revealing nothing. Until now. "What did you just do?" Xylax demanded, his blade still extended, his combat system still screaming contradictory data at him. "I stopped your blade, sir." Emma's voice carried across the silent arena with perfect clarity. "You were going to cut my throat to prove human fragility. I demonstrated that the demonstration was concluded. The sensors recorded exactly what happened, sir. I moved my hand. Perhaps your equipment requires maintenance." High Council Observer Jotaro rose from his seat, his crystalline form refracting the arena lights into dancing patterns. "Commandant Xylax, please repeat the final strike. We need verified data." Xylax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation his species couldn't suppress. "Observer Jotaro, I must respectfully decline. Combat demonstrations follow strict protocols." "Then enable combat recording mode and strike again." Jotaro's voice carried absolute authority. "The Council requires clarification." The Commandant's eyes locked onto Emma's. She stood perfectly still, her arms at her sides, her breathing controlled. 20 minutes of humiliation, and she showed no anger, no fear, no shame, just that same neutral professionalism that had marked her entire evaluation. "As you command, observer." Xylax raised his blade again, activating every combat sensor in the arena. Cadet Johnson, assume defensive position. Emma didn't move. Sir, I request a proper match. The arena remained silent for 3 heartbeats. Then the laughter started, nervous at first, then building. A human cadet, after public humiliation, after demonstrated inferiority, was challenging a commandant to actual combat? The audacity was either insanity or ignorance so profound it transcended comedy. Zilax's mandibles spread in what his species considered a smile. Cadet, no student has challenged an instructor to sanctioned combat in 300 cycles of academy history. The liability alone. I waive all medical claims, sir. Standard combat protocols, first blood or yield. If I lose, humanity withdraws its application permanently. Emma's voice never wavered. If I win, our application receives fair consideration without prejudice. The laughter died instantly. High Council Member Vexthul stood, her voice cutting through the sudden tension. Commandant, you cannot seriously consider. I accept. Zilax retracted his blade, his combat systems already running probability matrices. A proper match meant removing the safety limiters, meant treating this human as an actual opponent rather than a demonstration prop. The outcome was predetermined. His species had evolved for warfare, had genetic modifications spanning millennia, had technology integrated into their very cells. But that hand movement, that impossible catch, he needed to understand what he'd seen. Arena, Zilax commanded, configure combat circle, standard duel protocols. Weapons, practice blades, standard issue. Confirmed, the automated system responded. Combat circle activated, medical teams standing by. High Council observation mode enabled. All participants have waived injury liability. Combat will proceed on Commandant authorization. Emma walked to the equipment rack and selected a practice blade, standard length, weighted for baseline humanoid physiology, designed to register impacts without causing permanent damage. She tested its balance with 2 practice swings that made several alien cadets flinch with their precision. Zilax selected his own blade, feeling its familiar weight. 300 victories in arena combat, 67 actual battlefield engagements, decorations from 4 separate galactic conflicts, against one human who'd been in space for less than a cycle. They faced each other across the combat circle, 10 meters of charged flooring that would register every impact, every movement, every tactical decision. The arena's holographic displays activated, showing their vital signs, threat assessments, and combat predictions to the watching crowds. Emma's threat assessment read, minimal. Zilax's read, extreme. Cadet Johnson, Zilax said formally, you may withdraw your challenge without dishonor. What you demonstrated was impressive reflexes, perhaps a fortunate reaction. But this… Sir, Emma interrupted quietly, humanity didn't send me here to withdraw. She raised her blade in formal salute, the movement textbook perfect according to Korvathi military tradition. Zilax's mandibles froze mid-click. She knew their salute, their specific species proprietary combat salute that wasn't in any public database, that was taught only to Korvathi military cadets. Combat begins on my mark, the arena announced. 3, 2, 1. Engage. Emma moved, and every combat sensor in the grand arena registered the same thing simultaneously. Error. Movement exceeds. Maximum calculated parameters. Recalibrating. Zilax barely got his blade up in time. Zilax opened with the crescent disarm, a beginner technique taught to first-cycle cadets, designed to strip an opponent's weapon through leverage and momentum. It worked on every species in the concordate. Simple physics combined with Korvathi reaction speed made it essentially unavoidable. Emma's blade intercepted his at an angle that shouldn't have existed in 3-dimensional space. Sensor error, the arena computer announced. Blade trajectory does not match physical parameters. Recalibrating combat models. Zilax felt the impact vibrate through his weapon. She hadn't just blocked, she'd redirected his momentum back at him, forcing him to adjust his stance to avoid being pulled off balance by his own attack. The crescent disarm had just been reversed using principles he didn't recognize. He frowned, mandibles tightening, and increased his speed to intermediate level. The flowing river technique, 6 strikes in rapid succession from alternating angles, designed to overwhelm defensive responses. He'd used it to train lieutenant rank officers. Emma's blade met each strike with perfect timing, her footwork matching his advanced step for step. Not human footwork, Korvathi footwork. The specific weight distribution, the precise ankle rotation, the combat stance that took his species cadets 2 cycles to master. She was moving like one of his people. The laughter in the arena had died completely. 10,000 cadets leaned forward in their seats. This wasn't possible. Humans were slow, their neural processing limited by unenhanced biology. Even if she'd studied Korvathi techniques, knowing the theory and executing at combat speed were entirely different challenges. In the High Council observation box, Jotaro activated full recording protocols. "Archive everything," he commanded his aide. "Neural scans, biological telemetry, movement analysis. I want every data point." Zilax disengaged, circling left. Emma mirrored him perfectly, maintaining optimal combat distance. Her breathing remained controlled, her expression focused but calm. 20 exchanges, and she wasn't even winded. "You've trained in Korvathi combat doctrine," Zilax stated, making it not quite a question. "Yes, sir," Emma replied, her blade tracking his movement with mechanical precision. "That's classified military information." It was in the public database under Cultural Exchange, Korvathi Military Traditions, sir, published 15 cycles ago by your own government's outreach program. Zilax's mandibles clicked in irritation. The Cultural Exchange Program, a diplomatic initiative that had included basic military traditions to demonstrate Korvathi martial heritage. But those were simplified versions, demonstration forms, not actual combat applications. This human was using the real techniques. "Commandant," called a technician from the control booth, "we're registering impossible reaction times. Human neurology can't process combat data this quickly. Either our sensors are malfunctioning or—" "The sensors are fine," Zilax interrupted. He activated his full Korvathi combat speed, feeling his enhanced neural pathways surge to maximum capacity. 3 times baseline galactic reaction speed, the advantage that had made his species legendary warriors. "Cadet, prepare yourself." He struck. Emma not only matched his speed, she predicted his strikes. Her blade was already moving to intercept positions before he committed to attacks. She was reading his micro-movements, the tiny preparatory shifts that preceded Korvathi combat techniques, and responding to intentions rather than actions. "Impossible," breathed Weapons Master Kael'thas from the instructors section. "She's inside his decision loop." Zilax pressed harder, deploying advanced techniques from classified military manuals. The Shattered Moon combination, a 17-strike sequence that exploited gaps in defensive timing. The Void Strike, which used false positioning to create openings that didn't exist until the final moment. Emma countered with variations he'd never seen. She modified the Shattered Moon's timing mid-sequence, forcing him to abort the combination before she could exploit an opening she'd somehow created in his own attack. When he attempted the Void Strike, she responded with a counter-technique that felt like Korvathi doctrine, but incorporated elements he didn't recognize. Faster footwork, tighter blade control, efficiency improvements that made his version look wasteful. She was analyzing his combat doctrine in real time and finding weaknesses in techniques his species had perfected over millennia. "How?" Zilax demanded, breaking engagement again. His breathing was elevated now, his combat systems processing threats faster than they ever had in training scenarios. "How do you know these forms?" "Study and practice, sir," Emma replied, still maddeningly calm. "Humanity takes military education seriously." Council observer Jotaro stood abruptly. How does she know Korvathi's seventh form? That's not in any cultural database. That's active military doctrine, classified at command level. Emma shifted to seventh form stance. Perfect, textbook. She held it better than some of Zilax's own officers. We're very thorough researchers, observer, she called up to the council box, never taking her eyes off Zilax. Your species published tactical analysis of the Varen War. The seventh form appears in the battle footage, if you know what to look for. Battle footage is encrypted, Jotaro protested. Was encrypted, sir. Encryption standards from 20 cycles ago are considered basic security challenges in human academic institutions. We didn't hack anything. We solved mathematical puzzles. Zilax felt something shift in his combat assessment. This wasn't a lucky cadet. This wasn't even a talented student who'd memorized some techniques. This was a trained military operative who'd been systematically analyzing galactic combat doctrine. For how long? You've been preparing for this, he said slowly. Humanity has been preparing for galactic contact since we developed radio astronomy, sir. We assumed space was inhabited. We wanted to be ready. Emma's blade remained steady. Ready to defend ourselves, ready to contribute, ready to prove we belonged. Zilax made his decision. He activated his full combat augmentations, military-grade enhancements that were technically illegal in demonstration scenarios, neural acceleration, muscle response amplification, predictive combat algorithms, everything that made him not just a skilled warrior, but a weapons system. The arena's safety monitors immediately screamed warnings. Commandant, you're exceeding demonstration parameters, the automated system announced. Medical safety cannot be guaranteed. Override. Combat authorization, Zilax Alpha 77. This is now a sanctioned military evaluation. The warnings ceased. Zilax felt his combat systems reach full activation, felt the familiar rush of enhanced perception as the world seemed to slow around him. At this level, he could see individual dust particles floating through the arena lights, could track the minute muscle movements of every spectator in his peripheral vision. Emma smiled for the first time. Finally, she said quietly, "Thank you, sir." Then her pattern changed completely. She stopped fighting like a Korvathi warrior and started fighting like something the galaxy had never seen. Her blade work incorporated elements from at least 6 different species' combat doctrines, weaving between them so seamlessly that Zilax's predictive algorithms couldn't establish a threat pattern. She used Vrexian footwork with Korvathi blade angles, then shifted to something that looked like Zetharian defensive theory, but with offensive applications that shouldn't work. She was mixing incompatible combat styles and making them function together. "What is this?" Zilax gasped, barely deflecting a strike combination that had no name in any database he knew. "This is human, sir," Emma replied, pressing her advantage. "We've spent 5,000 years fighting each other. We got creative." Her blade found his shoulder. First blood. The arena exploded in chaos. The impact registered across every display in the grand arena. First blood to Cadet Emma Johnson. Combat duration, 4 minutes, 17 seconds. Zilax touched his shoulder, feeling the practice blade's impact marker. Not a serious wound. The safety systems had engaged, but undeniably a scoring hit. In 4 minutes, this human had penetrated defenses that had held against the Varen Empire's finest warriors. "Medical timeout?" the arena system inquired. "Negative," Zilax growled. "Combat continues." Emma had already reset to neutral stance, waiting. Her blade work shifted again, and Zilax's combat systems screamed new warnings. She was incorporating elements from species he'd barely heard of, Deltharan angular strikes, Myoxian pressure point targeting, even fragments of extinct Quarian blade theory that shouldn't exist in any living database. 18 different galactic combat doctrines wove through her movements, blending together in combinations that violated every principle of military theory. Deltharan and Myoxian techniques were fundamentally incompatible. different gravity evolution, different joint mechanics, different tactical philosophies. Combining them should create exploitable gaps. Emma made it look effortless. Combat prediction failure, announced the arena system. Movement patterns exceed programming parameters. Threat assessment algorithms unable to establish baseline. She was fighting outside the galaxy's understanding of combat itself. Zilax deployed the killing techniques, the real ones, the sequences he'd used to end the Varan War when he'd faced their champion in single combat while two fleets watched. Techniques designed not to score points, but to terminate threats with absolute efficiency. The falling star strike, which collapsed an opponent's center of gravity. Emma sidestepped it with minimal movement, her blade deflecting his follow-up. "We studied the Varan recordings, sir. You overcommit on the third rotation. Leaves your left flank exposed for 0.03 seconds. That recording is classified," Zilax managed, already flowing into his next attack. "Was classified. Your security protocols are excellent by galactic standards." She parried twice, riposted once. By human standards, they're undergraduate-level cryptography exercises. In the High Council box, Vexthul's fingers flew across her datapad, accessing human network databases through official diplomatic channels. Her face paled as information flooded her screens. "Observer Jotaro," she said quietly, "humanity has 157 distinct martial arts traditions. That's not unusual. The Korvathi have 73 from their homeworld alone, before they achieved space travel." Vexithul's voice shook slightly. "These are just the ones they developed fighting each other. They've spent their entire evolutionary history in armed conflict. Wars, Jotaro. Thousands of them. They weaponized everything from hand-to-hand combat to orbital mechanics before they ever left their planet." Jotaro's crystalline form flickered with shock. "They've been fighting themselves? For 5,000 recorded years. Probably longer." Vexthul scrolled through data files, her expression growing more disturbed. "They have military academies that are older than our first contact with the Korvathi. They teach warfare to their children as standard education." Below, Emma was systematically dismantling Zilax's defense, her blade finding gaps in his guard that his 4 decades of combat experience said didn't exist. Weapons Master Kael'thas vaulted from the instructor section down to arena level, his 6 legs carrying him to the combat circle's edge. "Stop! Commandant! Disengage!" Zilax broke contact, breathing hard. "Weapons Master." "Her technique is impossible." Kael'thas gestured at the holographic combat displays, which showed Emma's movement patterns as chaotic, overlapping probability clouds. "She's violating 17 fundamental principles of combat biomechanics. The angle of that last strike required joint rotation that her species doesn't possess. The leverage on her counter technique exceeds her muscle mass capacity by a factor of 3. The neurological processing speed to weave between incompatible combat doctrines should require computational augmentation." Emma overhead laughed mid-stance. "Yeah, physics said we couldn't fly either." "We disagreed." "You cannot violate physics," Kael'thas protested. "We don't violate it, sir. We just get really creative with the loopholes." She shifted her weight, and 3 different threat assessment systems registered 3 different attack vectors simultaneously. Human engineering philosophy. If the universe says no, ask why, then build around the limitation. Zilax struck again, putting his full enhanced strength behind a downward slash, designed to shatter practice blades through sheer impact force. His blade shattered, the practice weapon, designed to withstand forces that could dent starship hull plating, fractured along its length and fell in pieces to the combat circle floor. Emma's blade remained intact, angled perfectly to redirect his strike's momentum into the weapon itself rather than her defense. "Impossible," Kael'thas whispered. The entire arena stared in silence. Zilax looked at his broken weapon, then at the human standing before him with her practice blade held in loose guard position. His pride, his reputation, his species' legendary warrior tradition, all of it crumbling against this one cadet who fought like the galaxy was a puzzle she'd already solved. He reached for his hip and drew his ceremonial combat blade. Real steel, sharp enough to cut duraplast, the blade he'd carried through actual warfare, the weapon that had killed enemy commanders and ended planetary sieges. "Commandant, no!" Jataro's voice boomed across the arena. "That's a live weapon. This human wants a proper match." Zilax activated the blade's molecular edge, feeling it hum to lethal readiness. "I will provide one." Emma's expression shifted. The confident smile faded. Her stance changed, becoming something more defensive, more cautious. "Sir," she said quietly, "I don't want to hurt you." Zilax felt his pride, wounded, bleeding, desperate, flare into anger. "You cannot." He attacked with everything he had. 40 years of combat experience, genetic enhancements spanning generations, military-grade augmentation, and a live weapon against a practice blade. Emma moved. Her speed doubled. The arena's combat sensors simply gave up, displaying error messages across every screen. Emma's form blurred, her movements so fast that even the Korvathi cadets, enhanced for combat perception, couldn't track them clearly. She'd been holding back, extensively, 4 moves. The first disarmed Zilax's initial strike, redirecting his blade away from her body with minimal contact. The second targeted his wrist, striking the nerve cluster that controlled his grip with surgical precision. The third swept his legs using a technique that combined Korvathi leverage with something else, something uniquely human in its efficient brutality. The fourth placed her practice blade against his throat as he fell, stopping his descent 1 molecule from contact, exactly mirroring the opening position, exactly reversing the humiliation. Zilax lay on the combat circle floor, Emma's blade at his throat, her eyes looking down at him with neither triumph nor anger, just professional assessment, the look of a warrior who'd done her job. The entire grand arena sat in absolute silence. 10,000 cadets, 70 species, hundreds of instructors and observers, the High Council itself. Not one sound. Emma stepped back, removed her blade from his throat, and extended her hand to help him up. Zilax stared at it for a moment, then accepted, letting her pull him to his feet. She stepped back precisely 3 paces, brought her practice. Blade to formal salute position, perfect Korvathi military tradition, and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Humanity formally requests reconsideration of our application, sir." Then she stood at attention, waiting for judgment, while her words echoed through a galaxy that would never be the same. High Council observer Jataro's voice cut through the silence. "Emergency session. Now, in the arena." The council members descended from their observation box, their various forms moving with the weight of authority that governed 300 star systems. They formed a semicircle around Emma and Zilax, who remained at attention in the combat circle. "Cadet Johnson," Jataro began, his crystalline structure refracting light in agitated patterns. "You will explain what we just witnessed, immediately." "Yes, observer." Emma tapped her wrist display, and holographic projections bloomed into the air above the combat circle. "May I present a brief overview of human military history?" The holograms showed a blue-green planet rotating slowly. Then the images began. Armies clashing with primitive weapons, siege warfare, naval battles, aerial combat, nuclear exchanges frozen at the moment of detonation. "We've had organized warfare for 5,000 years of recorded history," Emma narrated, her voice steady and professional. "Probably longer, but our archaeological records get unclear before that. We've fought in every terrain type our planet offers. Mountains, deserts, oceans, Arctic tundra, jungle, urban environments, underground tunnel systems." The images shifted faster, showing weapons evolution. Spears to swords, to gunpowder, to missiles, to energy weapons. We've weaponized everything from rocks to orbital mechanics. Our first weapons were literally stones we threw at each other. Our most recent classified project involves using planetary gravity wells as kinetic accelerators. She paused, though I probably shouldn't have mentioned that last part. Vexthul's hands trembled as she cross-referenced data. These weapon classifications, you have more types than the rest of the Concordat combined. That sounds about right, Counselor. Emma pulled up another display. We categorize weapons by delivery system, target type, environmental application, and strategic purpose. The database has about 40,000 distinct entries. 40,000? Kael'thas stumbled backward. The entire Concordat military database contains 8,000 weapon systems across all member species. We're a creative people, sir. Zilax found his voice, still rough from exertion. Your planet, it's a Death World Classification 7. Hostile megafauna, extreme weather, geological instability. We assumed you evolved to survive your environment. We did, sir. But you also evolved to fight each other. Yes, sir. Turns out we're really good at both. Vexthul looked up from her datapad, her face stricken. Your species is still actively at war? The readings show conflicts as recently as— No, Counselor, Emma interrupted gently. We achieved global unity 50 years ago. These are historical records. We maintain the databases for educational purposes and strategic analysis. The council members exchanged looks of pure disbelief. Educational purposes, Jotaro repeated slowly. Yes, observer. Military history is a standard component of human education. We believe understanding our past conflicts helps prevent future ones. Zilax sat heavily on the combat circle edge, his legs suddenly unwilling to support him. You studied our combat techniques, the Korvathi forms, the classified manuals, the Varan war recordings. We studied everyone's, sir. Emma gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show detailed files on every Concordat member species. It's called intelligence gathering. We assumed it was standard procedure for species seeking to join an interstellar alliance. Intelligence gathering is espionage, Vexthul protested weakly. Not if the information is publicly accessible, Counselor. We didn't steal anything. We just looked very carefully at everything you'd already published, your cultural databases, your entertainment media, your historical archives, your educational materials. It's all there if you know how to analyze it. For how long? Jotaro demanded. How long have you been preparing for this? Humanity has been preparing for galactic contact since we developed radio astronomy and realized we might not be alone in the universe. About 100 years, observer. Emma closed some displays, opened others. We built long-term strategic initiatives, education programs, training protocols. We wanted to be ready. Ready for what? Kael'thas asked. Invasion? Conquest? Ready to contribute, sir. Ready to prove we belonged. Ready to defend ourselves if necessary. Emma's expression softened slightly. Ready to make friends, hopefully. We'd really prefer the friends option. Zilax laughed, a sound of pure disbelief mixed with something like hysteria. Friends, you systematically analyzed every species' combat doctrine, found weaknesses in classified military techniques, and learned to fight better than warriors who've trained their entire lives. For friendship. Well, yes, sir. We wanted to be useful allies. Emma looked genuinely puzzled by his reaction. Was that wrong? Vexthul was scrolling faster now, her movements increasingly frantic. Your application file says you're a cultural liaison specialist, not military. That's correct, Counselor. Cultural liaisons don't have 15 years of combat training. Every human cadet applicant has minimum 15 years of combat training, Counselor. It's part of our standard education curriculum. Emma tilted her head. I started when I was 6. Most children do. It builds discipline, physical fitness, and strategic thinking skills. The silence that fell over the arena was different this time. Not shock at impossible. Combat performance. but dawning horror at the implications. "You're a diplomat," Jotaro said slowly. "Cultural liaison, but yes, essentially. Your actual military candidates are still in the screening process, observer. They have more rigorous requirements." I didn't qualify. Zillax stood slowly, his mandibles clicking in a pattern that signified complete cognitive overwhelm. "I have trained for 40 cycles, formal military education, combat enhancement, active warfare experience. You? Since I was 6, sir, so 21 years? Emma did the math quickly. "It's normal where I'm from. Most humans have some level of combat training. It's cultural." "Your children train harder than our elite forces," Kael'thas whispered. "I wouldn't say harder, sir, just longer. We start young because it's safer to learn falls and basic technique while bodies are still developing. By the time we're adults, it's just automatic." The council members looked at each other. Centuries of galactic military tradition, strategic doctrine, and combat theory had just been casually dismantled by a species that taught warfare to children as a standard educational practice. Jotaro drew himself up formally. "On behalf of the Galactic Military Concordat High Council, I formally apologize to humanity for the treatment you received today. Your application is not only accepted, but will be fast-tracked for immediate consideration." "Thank you, Observer. Additionally, we offer you the rank of Combat Instructor, effective immediately, with full teaching authority." "I respectfully decline, Observer." Emma's voice remained polite but firm. "I came here to complete cadet training. I'd like to finish what I started, if that's acceptable." Zillax stepped forward. "I formally request permission to train under human combat methods." Emma blinked. "Sir?" "You defeated me, decisively, honorably." His mandibles spread in what might have been respect. "I want to understand how. I want to learn what you know." "That would take years, sir." "Then I will train for years." Jotaro raised one crystalline appendage. "Emergency Council session is called to discuss humanity's role in the Concordat. We need to completely reassess our strategic integration plans." He looked at Emma. "You're dismissed, Cadet. Report to standard quarters. Training resumes tomorrow." "Yes, Observer, thank you." Emma saluted formally, turned, and walked toward the arena exit. Behind her, the galaxy's military leadership began the difficult process of accepting their new reality. The Academy's administrative offices worked through the night, drafting new protocols. By morning, the official bulletin appeared on every cadet's datapad. Emergency Regulation Update, Human Integration Protocols. Effective immediately, human combat cadets must wear neural inhibitors during sparring exercises with non-human species. Inhibitors will reduce reaction speed and strength output to match training partners. Physiological baseline. This is for the safety of non-human participants. All existing combat curriculum difficulty ratings have been revised upward by 3 classification levels to account for human performance standards. In his private quarters, Zillax sat cross-legged on the floor, watching a holographic instructor demonstrate a human martial art called Judo. The instructor, a human male who appeared to be in his 60s, was throwing opponents half his age with casual efficiency. The documentation said this was a beginner-friendly martial art. The documentation also said achieving basic proficiency took approximately 10 years. Zillax had 43 other human martial arts queued for study after this one, and those were just the ones focused on unarmed combat. The weapons-based disciplines numbered in the dozens. It would take him the rest of his life to master even a fraction of what Emma knew. His datapad chimed with an update. 50 human cadets confirmed for next cycle's enrollment. 50 more like Emma Johnson, each with 15-plus years of training, each a walking repository of combat knowledge that made galactic military doctrine look like elementary exercises. The galaxy was preparing for complete military doctrine revision. Every academy, every training program, every strategic planning committee. Humanity hadn't just joined the Concordat, they'd obsoleted 3,000 years of military theory. Emma sat alone in the cafeteria the next morning, her tray of food steaming in front of her. The other cadets gave her a wide berth, clustering at tables on the far side of the massive hall. Whispers followed her everywhere. That's her. Defeated Zillax in 4 moves. Humans are terrifying. She was halfway through her meal when a small figure approached hesitantly. Azila, a Deltharan cadet with iridescent skin that flickered between blue and purple with nervousness. Cadet Johnson? Azila's voice was barely above a whisper. Emma looked up, smiling. Just Emma is fine. What's up? Could you teach me the human combat techniques? The words tumbled out in a rush. I know you probably have better things to do, and I'm not very good at fighting, but I want to learn, and, hey, breathe. Emma gestured to the seat across from her. Of course I can teach you. The human stuff? Sure. Azila sat, her skin brightening with relief and excitement. Fair warning, though, Emma continued, grinning. The first year is just learning how to fall properly. It's really boring. Just falling? Yeah, break falls, rolls, how to distribute impact, how to protect your head and joints. Emma took a bite of food. We figured out early that knowing how to take a hit is way more important than knowing how to throw one. Can't win fights if you're injured in the first exchange, right? That's actually really smart. Tell that to 6-year-old me. I thought it was the worst. Emma laughed, but my sensei was right. Foundation. First, fancy moves later. By the time Emma finished eating, 5 more cadets had joined the table, all asking similar questions. She found herself scheduling informal training sessions, warning each of them that human martial arts were really slow to learn and kind of boring at first. None of them cared. They all wanted to understand what they'd witnessed in the arena. In the high council chambers, far above the academy's training levels, the real conversation was taking place. Jotaro's crystalline form cast fractured light across the conference table. We invited them because we thought they needed protection. A young species, newly spacefaring, venturing into a dangerous galaxy. Vexithul's voice was quiet. Now I wonder who we need protection from. Not from them, Kael'thas interjected quickly. They're idealistic, honorable. You saw how Johnson held back, how she tried to avoid hurting Zillax even at the end. They have ethics, restraint. But, Jotaro prompted. But, Kael'thas gestured at the combat recording still playing on the chamber's displays. What did they survive to become this? What kind of evolutionary pressure creates a species where the diplomats fight like our elite commandos? Where children train harder than our military academies require? The 3 council members sat in silence, watching Emma Johnson dismantle a legendary warrior with techniques she'd learned as a child. What are their actual soldiers like? Vexthul finally whispered. Nobody had an answer. In Training Hall 7, Emma was demonstrating basic breakfall techniques to a group of 12 alien cadets who'd gathered to learn. They ranged from Korvathi to Vrexian to species she didn't recognize, all watching intently as she showed them how to tuck and roll. Okay, now you try. Remember, chin to chest, round your back, slap the mat to distribute impact. The first cadet attempted the roll and landed awkwardly, limbs everywhere. No, tuck your head. We're trying to avoid concussions. Emma rushed over to help, laughing. Here, like this. See how I'm making myself into a ball. You want to be round, not flat. From the observation deck above, Zillax watched the training session with his aide standing beside him. Sir, the aide asked, your assessment of humanity's integration? Zillax was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma patiently correct another cadet's form, her laughter echoing through the training hall as someone tumbled incorrectly again. We didn't reject humanity, he said finally. We survived their audition. His aide looked at him sharply. Sir? They came here knowing they could defeat any of us. Johnson held back the entire demonstration until I pushed her to reveal her capabilities. They wanted us to accept them on our terms. not theirs. Zilax's mandibles clicked softly. They're giving us time to adjust to what they are. That's a kindness. Below, Emma's voice carried up clearly. Okay, great. Now that everyone's got the basic idea, let's do 20 more repetitions each. The alien cadets groaned. In a secure communication channel, encrypted at the highest classification level, a report filed through concordant intelligence networks. Priority, maximum classification, eyes only, High Council, subject, humanity, threat assessment revision. Previous assessment, potential ally, limited military capacity, requires protection and integration support. Revised assessment. Species demonstrates military capability exceeding all established concordant benchmarks. Cultural emphasis on combat training suggests civilization-wide martial tradition. Diplomatic representatives possess combat skills equivalent to elite special forces across all member species. Recommendation: immediate acceptance to concordant with fast-tracked integration into military advisory positions. Establish human combat doctrine study programs across all academies. Critical note: observed capabilities represent their civilian population's baseline training. Actual military operatives remain unassessed. Conclusion: not our enemies. Pray they stay our friends. Emma, oblivious to high-level political maneuvering, was showing her new students proper push-up form. Just 20 more! Come on, this is the easy stuff, I promise! The alien cadets were collapsing halfway through, their various physiologies struggling with what human fitness instructors considered basic calisthenics. Emma wasn't even breathing hard. Azila managed 15 before her arms gave out. How, are you not tired? Oh, I'm just warming up. Emma checked her personal training schedule on her datapad. I usually do about an hour of conditioning before breakfast. This is pretty light. The cadets stared at her in disbelief. Anyway, Emma continued cheerfully, this foundational stuff usually takes about a year to build up properly. Once everyone's got good conditioning and breakfall skills, then we can start learning the fun parts. What are the fun parts? Someone gasped. Throws, locks, strikes, weapons training, tactical applications. Emma grinned. All the stuff you probably wanted to learn first, but trust me, foundation first makes everything else way easier. She looked at her schedule again. Oh, cool. Next week my advanced training modules arrive from Earth. We're going to learn about adaptive combat strategies and multi-species engagement protocols. Can't wait. The alien cadets looked at each other with a mix of exhaustion and determination. Humanity had arrived at the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never be the same.